Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Well, obviously, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for coming. As far as 30 minutes about talking about myself, I can pretty much tell you I'm probably not going to do that because it's my least favorite thing to do in the whole world. But I guess a quick snapshot. Been in the marketing, went to UPI for business and marketing stuff, and been in small businesses, and then moved to the college and kind of worked in marketing there. Where I'm at now, I guess, with my business, which is called Vessey Media, is over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, I've kind of gotten into that space of, Amazon, drop shipping, Facebook and Google advertising, obviously, and developed that skill set, I guess, and pretty much just use that skill set to generate revenue for myself, multiple businesses, and then lots of clients around Canada and the US. And, I'm not really sure how much into the weeds we want to get with what exactly that is, or maybe we can open it up to Q&A as far as like that goes. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't really know if I'm going to talk about I would rather, honestly, the more time we have for Q&A, if anyone has any questions about, moving their business into the digital, I guess, marketplace and what that looks like in 2020 and moving in 2021, what's kind of the trends that I've been seeing, and, where the best resources are best spent, dollars and I guess manpower too. That would be, I guess, what I would probably focus on. That's what I typically do mostly.
Josh, I'd be curious how you learned, like, was this just kind of a trial and error sort of thing, or was there like a certain source, books, articles, any kind of insights on that?
That's a good question. So typically, I first started, trying to, I guess, everyone is at the side hustle, and I went through the real estate way and was building houses and flipping them and stuff, and it was great, but it wasn't my skill set, so I was constantly having to rely on other people, like my father-in-law, who was a contractor and stuff, and I just didn't do it. So I decided to just use marketing, which is my own skill set, and I was doing some client work. And back then, this is probably like 7 or 8 years ago, when Facebook advertising sort of just took off, and I guess I would say that I was an early adopter of it. And to be honest, back then it was extremely, extremely easy because no one else was doing it, and the auction prices were so low, and you could pretty much just put whatever you wanted in front of people. It's much more complicated and much more, I guess, competitive now. But so I guess I kind of just, as I would say, the answer to that is combining what I knew already about marketing and sales with these new platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Google back then. I almost, because I was an early adopter, grew with them, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was pretty rudimentary in the beginning, so it wasn't difficult to set up a campaign. But as, I did more internet sales and more landing pages and more websites and stuff, and as Facebook got a little more complex and Google Ads got more complex of what you could do with them, it sort of just went hand in hand with each other. So as I was growing, they were growing too. So, I will say, though, at the end of the day, it's kind of like what we said during the introductions. Like, they're just tools. So, like, the problems in marketing and sales and, business, it's all the same. It's just we're using different tools to achieve those or to solve those pain points now. So people get a little bit scared of, Facebook advertising and AdWords and Google Ads. But really, you just got to figure out how to use the tools to do the same thing you once did with radio and TV, which is, solve a pain point, get in front of a targeted audience, and then have a good enough offer that they're going to buy. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, essentially that's how I got into it.
Nice. Any mistakes you can speak to as like an expert in the space now that you'd be willing to share, just so maybe people getting into it or that are in it already, things to like maybe look out for that you'd recommend?
Oh, mistakes every week. That's how it goes. Testing. I guess we live by the motto, those who test more win more. So, especially during this, in the digital marketing space, you can just do so many things and test so many things, and you get so much data back. And that's kind of what we like to focus on. Is we call ourselves data-driven marketing, because, we'll test 5 different things on a day or over 3 or 5 days. And essentially we're just looking at the data and seeing what's working or not. Like, we're not pretending to be gurus here. we're taking, proven tactics and proven kind of philosophies and letting the market decide which one works. So yeah, there's fails every day, but that's kind of part of it. If you look at like the big boys like Netflix and Amazon and those, they would have thousands of different ads and landing pages and checkout carts and all that stuff that they're testing every day. So they're failing every day too. And essentially you just take as much data as you can from as much volume and traffic as you can, and then you point everyone to the one that wins. But me personally, yeah, I've had tons of fails. I've had a few Amazon stores and a few Shopify dropshipping stores that, there's fails in the kind of general sense of, products that you invest in that just didn't work. And then there's fails in, like we talked about the Facebook, without getting, again, too much into the weeds. Like there's things like if you try to scale too quickly, if you say you did have a winning ad and you were spending $25 a day, a couple of years ago, you'd be like, oh, that's a winner. Let's just spend $500 a day. And then that just completely wrecks your whole campaign and you just lost thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? So there's lots of fails, but I don't really see them that way. I see them as lessons, and I see them as good learning opportunities. And that's, I guess, another way how I've learned over the last 6 or 7 years is just by testing stuff weekly and failing.
Mm-hmm. And so let's chat about as an organization, how you've kind of also learned and grown from there. So probably, I can't speak to how you started it, but I assume maybe more of a local market and grab traction, go more international. I don't know if you could speak to any sort of milestones, lessons learned going through that as well.
Yeah, it definitely started local with, local, mostly like PEI, couple buddies and couple of my buddies' parents who had restaurants or, insurance companies and stuff, and just doing some ads for them. And then, there's, which we all probably know about now. Again, I might have been an early adopter on like things like Fiverr and Upwork and, I guess platforms like that allow you to reach an international or even a domestic, like national network. And then,
so you would
the same thing.
Services on that, not hire services.
Yeah. So I started by promoting services on there, and now I hire services on there. So, it's the same thing. It's like we talked about, it's the same thing over and over again, like social proof, credibility, all that stuff that you as a business would want to do. I just did those for my own kind of profiles on those and was able to kind of grow those and take on clients. And then now, I guess to talk about milestones, luckily I've gotten to a point where I sort of built this brand and this reputation. I'll say that most of it's in Toronto, actually. So I've sort of got this network, you do some work for this person who knows that person. That's, I don't think anything new, but that's a milestone for me that I don't really have to go out and like push myself on people. I'm lucky that I've kind of built a good enough brand there that, you know what I mean?
Yep. Very nice. Okay. I had something else there, but it'll come back to me. I've been asking a lot. I'll throw it over to somebody else maybe for a second.
Josh, I had a question just to follow up on. I'm a big proponent of these aren't failures; these are just another way not to do something, right? But right. Just to follow up on that, I'm interested if when you're looking at a strategy, do you have to take the region into consideration? Like something that might work in Toronto, for example, maybe that doesn't resonate if you're, in a different market. Could you speak a little bit about that, perhaps?
Oh, 100%. And I think that that is true on both ends of the business. I think the customer-facing stuff, which is the product for sure, and the strategies and tactics that you would use to, say, acquire a lead or a customer in Toronto is not the same as PEI because the markets and the cultures are two totally different things. But that comes back to the benefit of these platforms like Google Ads and Facebook, in that you can tailor two different messages, the same, that go to the same landing page or the same cart or the same website, but how you got them there was two totally different messages, because it's really easy to kind of have two different campaigns and target them based on where they're from. But the same thing on my end, like what works to acquire a new client in Toronto does not work in PEI. There's two totally different markets. And most times if you tried to do say what works in Toronto would actually turn someone off in PEI, because we'll say, like, take just hypothetically, if I told someone in Toronto that my services were $50,000, then they would probably listen. If I said that to someone in PEI, they would tell me where to go and how to get there. But vice versa, if I told someone in Toronto that it was $5,000, they probably wouldn't look at me again, because they would actually devalue me based on, well, that's their marketplace. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's no question that when you're creating a campaign or when you're creating anything with audiences, kind of coming back to the psychology and the culture of that specific one is super important. And that's why I love these platforms, because you can duplicate a campaign with the same ads and change the copy. So same picture, different copy, two different messages, going to two different places at the same time gets the same result in the end for the company. It's a good question though. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did that answer it?
Yeah, absolutely. Good answer.
So maybe I'll ask a question. Has anyone in the meeting ever ran their own digital campaign with paid traffic, whether on Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of those?
Not yet.
No, I haven't either. I have done some training on it, but I've not applied it.
What about like Pat and Rachel at Startup Zone? Do you guys do anything with paid, either for reach or for leads or for convert? Do you guys do anything paid, or is it all mostly kind of organic?
Sorry. Yeah, mostly organic, but we do a decent amount of paid as well, mainly for applications and for some of our bigger events, but through Facebook ads. And then Redden also does Google ads too. We have a Google ad budget as a Google nonprofit for, something like that. Because we're a nonprofit, we have a pretty big budget for Google ads. So Redden takes that on. But as far as Facebook ads go, they're pretty common for us.
Awesome. And so typically your goal is just awareness, would you say, probably?
Yeah, and usually, like, most of our ads that we are putting out on Facebook are either for applications or for bigger events. So usually we have a pretty solid call to action if we are investing money into it. But for awareness and for stories, we don't generally invest money, and we just go for organic reach.
Okay, great. I guess my next question would be, so I feel like I'll just ask some questions and see what people know, and then we can kind of steer the conversation that way. But has anyone heard the term funnel before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
In fact, I've built one. I just haven't launched it.
Okay. And what platform did you use to build that?
It's a Tony Robbins Ding Graziano KBB platform. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I've seen the ads for it.
Yeah, so I joined that a year and a half ago, did the course and set it all up, but I haven't launched because I had to understand my customer better and also establish the expertise. But now I'm at the point where I have to work out, okay, how am I going to do the target marketing and what information am I going to give them to try to lower their uncertainty. This is for a training course.
That's what the product you're kind of trying to use the funnel for is for a training course?
Exactly, yeah. This would be a side business to our pitch for using the word formula to actually solve problems. This would be a training on, how can you leverage this math in your general life or in your business.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
Josh,
John,
could you
I just
define what
add
you
to
mean by funnel?
Go for it, Tim. Sorry.
No, sorry about that. No, I mean, I've definitely heard the term funnel and, building a funnel or your sales funnel, but it doesn't sound like that's what Troy was talking about. If it's like, or unless it's a platform that you need in order to collect, leads or what have you. But is that what you're referring to?
You asking
Josh,
me?
or
I was asking Josh what just to define what you mean by funnel.
well, yeah, I think Troy, like what he's doing is building a sales funnel for sure. That would be the way I view funnel is just, a term that's been popularized, I think, in the last couple of years. It just is a sales process, and it's taking someone from what we like cold traffic who never heard of you before,
Right.
and having an automated system that puts them through into kind of leads, into warm traffic, and then hopefully a certain percentage of them that with predictability and automation that are going to be customers. So it's just a drip system that, if it's set up right, is not just a bunch of, say, a landing page and like a order form page and a sales page and a cart, but the whole funnel is, how you get people leads. So what ads are you running? What SEO are you running? What, organic blog posts are you running that get people to that first step? And then each step of the way has kind of elements plugged in, say maybe it's an automated email series when they put their email in for the opt-in. It's just the whole map essentially of how you're taking someone from never hearing of your company before to, a certain percentage being paying customers.
Right. Okay.
And the point of that is that you build the map and then you sort of plug in the pieces, and then without, again, getting too much in the weeds, but that's typically what, first of all, I'll say that's what Vessey Media, that's kind of where we built our name, is building complete sales funnels, not so much just like a Facebook campaign, because in my opinion, and what I learned through my own trial and error over the last couple of years, is like that's a lot of people kind of, especially I find lately, are talking kind of poorly about, Facebook ads are dead, they're too expensive, or Google ads. And really every client I've worked with, or even friend that I've helped out, it's because their funnel wasn't complete. So that it looked like their Facebook ads weren't working, but there's been no real company in the history of companies that just had one ad to a checkout that has really made a bunch of money. Do you know what I mean? There's always pieces of, taking someone, there's warm traffic, and the messaging at that point in the customer journey is different than it was before, and same as closing a sale. So building the entire funnel is a big piece, but it's really the only way to make it profitable and repeatable and predictable. And then what we do typically is we'll build it, and like we were talking about, like you find your pain points and you kind of test the market. And like I'm a big proponent of letting the market decide. I don't think anyone really knows what their customer really wants until they tell you. So putting as many messages or as many kind of ads or as many whatever it is in front of people and letting them decide and letting that be the winner. And then really what you do after that, once you have each piece of the funnel, I guess, mapped out and working to a degree that's either breaking even or profitable, then the rest is just optimizing it. So, if your ads have a click-through rate of whatever it is, say like 10%, well, how can we optimize that ad by maybe changing the copy or changing the image or changing the call to action to get that up to 11 or 12%? Because we know that 2% more people at the top of the funnel is going to equal 0.5% or 1% more people at closed sales at the bottom of the funnel. And we know how much that is to us in profit, so we know how much we can spend at the top. So it's essentially, like I said, it's using all these platforms. Like the Tony Robbins one it's a good, I've heard of it. I don't think it's a platform. I'm pretty sure it's a training, but ClickFunnels is the one I use that lets you build each kind of page, and then Facebook advertising and Google and email and stuff. And it's just using those tools to create a customer journey, which is also called the funnel. And so that you can, because all these tools give you so much data of what's happening at each point of this when a customer goes through it, then you know where to focus your optimization, maybe what's not working, and how to change it, so that at the end of the day, $1 in at the top of your funnel, spending on someone who doesn't know about your business, is going to equal hopefully $2 or $3 out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I think to one point that you're saying about like the course and then the other product, that's something we work on a lot with clients too, is, everyone has their core product, which I call the back end product, which is essentially like your main kind of driver of what you want your core customers to be. But having a front end product like a course or something like that you could almost break even on to get people into your ecosystem to then sell them later on your core product, which is your back end product, I think is super important, especially in 2020, 2021, whether that's, if you're in an e-commerce way, maybe you're selling a hat for $10, but that's not really your your front. That's just so you can send an ad to someone who never heard about you before, get them in the door. Maybe you spend $10 to get that sale and that $10 hat, but you now have a complete sales funnel automated that's going to eventually, over the next week or two or month, if it's a bigger product, get them to spend another $10, $20, $30. And that was just free money because you got them in your ecosystem for free. And now we're just upselling them essentially. So figuring out, and again, the data to figure out the long lifetime value of a customer is super important because that kind of helps you know where to start with your budget, right? So do you have a question there? Oh, sorry. I thought you had a question. Yeah.
Me? I have a lot of questions, but I'm just interested in what you're saying. Although I do have a question when the time is right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just wrap up that point. Like figuring out the lifetime value, I mean, it's really, you need data and you need to probably fail a bunch of times on your funnel to figure out what that is. And you need, 30 to 60 days at least to figure out how much money you can spend at the top of the funnel and almost guaranteed profit at the bottom of the funnel. But over time, the more you do this, and, we've had clients that we're working on for a year and a half that it's pretty much like clockwork. And at some points we'll even take a loss at the top of the funnel. Like we'll take leads. We call them leads, like people getting them in the funnel at a loss because we know that 20% of those at the other end are going to come out and make us profitable. What was your question? Sorry.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't want to monopolize the questions, but so I'm interested in understanding what kind of skill sets do you need to bring to the table when you're creating sort of an interesting, engaging environment, for that customer journey, because and it's a little bit self-serving, I guess, because I'm looking for reasons why you would want to engage with, let's say, a graphic artist or maybe even someone with a psychology background, to help make your site more engaging. And it's almost like you have a guy standing outside with a sandwich board to get you to go into the store. Well, that's the digital equivalent, but you have to do that in a way that doesn't offend people, but is just engaging and drawing them in. So could you just speak a bit about the skill sets that might be required to do that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I guess the way I would kind of frame that is, every interaction you have with a customer online or in person is essentially, in my opinion, a transaction. So, if we're talking about getting someone to your website, instead of having someone outside with a sandwich board, you have a digital ad or a digital kind of piece of content. Like creating incentive is super important. And at different levels of the customer journey, the incentive or the offer is either greater or smaller, if that makes sense. So essentially, if you are just trying to get someone to your website to drive traffic, well, then that piece of graphic content or whatever it is has to, A, be a pattern interrupt to stop that person from scrolling or reading on their website or scrolling through their feed. And then 2, it has to do 2 things. It has to incentivize them to click, because that's really the only way you can make this worthwhile is if you get them to your website. And then it also has to basically either provide enough intrigue or the offer or something like what, basically the easiest way to say it, if you have an ad, the only point of that ad is to get someone to click on it. And then whatever page they go on, the only point of that page is to get someone to opt in. And opt in could mean purchase, or it could mean give us your email address in exchange for a free PDF or a free whatever it is. For your case, it might be, put your email address in here to get access to a student list. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. So there's the exchange. You give me your email address and I'm going to give you something back. So giving your email address as the customer is, I guess, a lot more, it's a bigger transaction for me to give you my email address than it was one step ago for me to just click on the ad. So clicking on the ad, all we're trying to do is, one, like I said, break the pattern interrupt, and two, create some sort of curiosity, intrigue, incentive to just click. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then same again, like the offer is super important, because the next step, which would be maybe not for your case, but if we're talking about a purchase, well, that offer needs to be enough of a value proposition for the customer for them to give you money. So that's obviously a little bit more than we took them from just wanting them to click, and then we just wanted them to give email address, and now we want them to give money. So the offer at each stage in the transaction, the value proposition is super important in each one. Did that help at all?
It did. I was just wondering, is that something that you would bring in a special skill set to do that? Like, would you engage with someone that maybe had that psychology background to help you understand, what characteristics of a page need to be enhanced, or just to do that drawing in and get people to be prepared to give up their email address?
Yeah, so typically that's me, and then I would outsource, basically, to jump back, like whatever client we bring on, whatever industry they're in, like I will personally do a ton of research into that. And then again, we're just trying to boil it down to, if we're talking about, marketing, it's just basic human psychology. Like, really, what are you trying to fix for someone? I don't know if you guys ever heard of Seth Godin, but I think he put it so well. I would probably butcher this, so don't quote me, but essentially he said, like, you're not trying to sell a hammer. So you're not talking about the hammer. You're trying to sell, that person doesn't need a hammer. They need a hole in the wall, or they need a nail in the wall. And really, they don't even need a nail in the wall. They need to put up a picture for their wife. And their wife doesn't need the picture up. Their wife wants to feel safe in their house. So then if we reverse engineer that back, if we're trying to sell a hammer, well, then the ad copy or the ad imagery to get someone to click, that's why you always see like home hardware, these like cozy families and stuff like that, because they're just trying to paint a picture of future casting their life of what it's going to look like when they buy that hammer to put that picture up and complete that project. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So typically, like, those things don't really change. It's just figuring out what's going to work within that industry, within that kind of market. And then, like I said, our team will meet and we'll kind of make 10 different versions of the same ad or the same concept, we'll say, see which one works by giving $25 a day to each one. And then whichever one works based on the market, then we'll move on, and we'll probably come back to it in a month. And like I said, try and optimize that a little bit more. Maybe the copy could be a little bit more pushing towards the safety. Maybe it's a little bit more towards the hammer. Like, we are constantly testing and optimizing, basically.
So in other words, you help the customer find out the why behind their product. Like, why is this product important? And then try to tailor the copy for that.
Absolutely. We call it future casting, but we use that quite often, especially if you're talking about for your product, for example, the course. The why behind the course is super important. And like, what are we trying to vividly paint a picture of what their life will look like after they've taken that course and started implementing what it is. We never sell the product. We always sell the results or the benefit.
Josh, I had a question for you, and just taking like a couple steps back there when you were asking everyone about paid advertising. And I think what we see at the Zone is that people feel like, hey, doing a $50 sort of test run for the month, like, it's never $50, right? It's something that needs like thousands of dollars to, get the value out of it. What's kind of your perspective on that, like, testing out and that hesitation of like, I'm not there yet? If you could speak to that maybe a little bit.
That's a good question. I would probably be the wrong person to ask, because I've spent tens of thousands of dollars of my own money because I just think it's so important. And but I do run into that myself a lot when I'm meeting with potential clients, and they just see it as like, I guess I would say that, in my opinion, and this is obviously very biased because what I do, but I would say that every company, especially in 2020 and 2021, is a marketing company first, and whatever else they do second. And if you look at most of the successful companies, if we take even the big brands like Nike and Netflix, like they're a marketing company, or even something like CrossFit, like those companies are marketing companies because they're getting people to buy into their brand, and they're spending millions and millions of dollars to get millions and millions of dollars on the other end back. So that's kind of where I would see. But to answer your question, I guess more pointedly, and this is kind of the philosophy that I use for my campaigns and for clients, is I like to spend as little as money possible to get the results. And a lot of people, like yourselves included, or maybe anyone else on the call, like you probably have a customer list or some sort of list that you could send to a page. Maybe it's opt-ins, maybe it's to sell something for super cheap. If it's an email list, send an email, see if you can get people to buy in. And then what I typically do is I start to reverse engineer backwards. So like I touched on, like it's not as easy anymore to just create a cold traffic campaign on Facebook and get a bunch of results because it's so competitive and it's so expensive now. So if you can find a way, and not everyone can do this, so we test as cheaply as possible to get people there with paid ads if you can't. But if you can find a way to get the result you're looking for, whether it's opt-ins and an email address or a lead generation or whatever it is, from either a website like YouTube, maybe you do a YouTube video with a link in the description, you give something away for free information, hit the link below to get the rest of the training, whatever it is. If you can figure out a way to get that done as cheaply as possible, well, then what we'll do is we'll just set up your paid traffic with Google and Facebook to be retargeting only. And I think everyone knows what retargeting is. Maybe I'll just say real quickly, it's basically automated ads that only show up based on action from your website, which means they're the only people you're spending money on Facebook or wherever it is, Google, are people who have already been exposed or seen the thing you're trying to sell them. So that means they're warm traffic. They're not cold, they've heard of you. They're not hot traffic because they haven't purchased from you or they haven't done the thing you want them to, but they're warm. They were interested enough at some point to get to where you want them to go. And now all we have to do is, I guess, nurture that a little bit and get them back there and hopefully close the transaction, as we'll call it. And so basically, the way I typically do that is, we talked about pain points before. Those same objections, the pain points that we're trying to solve, if they didn't opt in or they didn't close or the transaction wasn't completed, means that we probably didn't solve those pain points from them in that first go around. So what I typically like to do is just kind of take the top 3 objections that people might have. Maybe the price was too high. Maybe the value didn't seem enough. Maybe the resource that we're trying to give away for free wasn't quite good enough. So how do we then get them back to that page by, in an ad, solving that for them? Does that make sense? We just hit the nail right on the head. Like, and it doesn't have to be like, hey, maybe you thought this was too expensive. Maybe the ad is 24 hours only, 50% off that thing you just looked at. Because that will tell us then that, okay, they were interested enough, but the price wasn't what they were willing to pay. If we send them an ad for 50% off and they go buy it, well, then the market just told us what the price is for this. Does that make sense? So that, and then reverse engineer that back. So if we kind of have, again, without getting too much into it, if we have, like, say, a purchase that we went back and we figured out that we're retargeting for 50% off, really works well. There's 2 options there. One, you can change the price on the front on the product to be 50% less, or you can leave it as is, because them going back for 50% plus the people who just bought for the 100% might actually be a good equation. Some people are going to buy for full percent, 100%, sorry, and then the rest, we're going to get them back with a discount. So once we have those figured out, well, let's go back one more step. Now let's figure out very broadly who your target market might be and send some paid traffic, test traffic to get them to that page, because we know if they don't buy, our retargeting strategy is working at converting at a good enough percentage that essentially they're going to get back there and buy. So I basically I don't know if that made any sense. So I'm just trying to talk about it off the top of my head, but like, I basically reverse engineer everything. Start with as cheaply as possible, trying to get the desired result, and then work backwards until you have a funnel or a system that you drop people in and you know that they're going to get there with the system you created eventually, and you know what's going to come out the other side.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think we get some people in here and the first objection is always price, right? Because that's the easy thing, and be like, oh no, it's price. And so some people heavily discount. Some people even offer it for free. And then the response back that you get is like, you know what, this actually doesn't fit our needs. And then that is like huge insights for a lot of companies to understand that. Because I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, it's the price, and we're not aligning with the market. So that's something we see. So is there a minimum amount that you could, ballpark that you believe is an effective amount? And obviously, trying to be as unbiased as possible. And would you recommend people testing things, for the first time at like $50 or $250? So I guess, is there that ultimate large budget number? And then is there maybe those like tester numbers that you see to be effective that, beats the algorithms? And understand if you don't want to share trade secrets and stuff.
No, I'm happy to share. My personal opinion is that I guess the easiest way to say it would be, if you're just going to use paid traffic to test audiences, test markets for your product, then I would say casting a wide net is the best way to go. So, without, I guess, getting too much into it, say if we're using Facebook and building audiences and building, target markets and targeting people, well, then I would probably build ad sets, like 10 of them, that are based on different interests, different income levels, different, lookalikes compared to other pages they like, whatever it is. Build 10 of those and test, or say 5 of them at $25 a day. And so that's only going to, Facebook is only going to spend, save $35 a day. It's only going to spend $35 of your money to test all those markets for you. And the way you set that up with campaign budget optimization, it's called, is that as soon as Facebook realizes that no one in this group of interest is clicking on your ad, they won't even send it anymore within like hours. So they'll basically do that for you. 3 years ago, that was one of the biggest things I used to have to do for clients, is I used to monitor almost 3 times a day to see which ones were working and pause or turn off the ones that weren't. Now Facebook does that part for you, which is great. So you set your daily budget and you give it as many options as you can. I wouldn't do probably more than 5 different ad sets with 10 different ads, say, and then it will actually optimize that based on the engagement with the ad for you as the day goes along. So I would, if it was me personally, I was going to start my own, I would probably go $50 a day, because it's just the volume of people that you can access to for 25 or 35 isn't quite enough, in my opinion, to get a good snapshot. But if you went $50 a day for 3 days, I can pretty much tell you which one's a winner and which one's not, right there. So a couple $100 would go a long way, I think. And then again, it depends on the lifetime value of your customer too. Like if you're selling a $2,000 product, then maybe you want to do $100 a day, because one sale is going to be $2,000. You know what I mean? Like, it's all relative to either what you're selling, what your budget is, and what your customer is. So I know that's kind of a workaround answer, but it is a little bit unique to each business, I would say. But
for sure,
that I would set it up to optimize, let Facebook do the work for you. They're the ones with all the data on all of us sitting in this meeting. So if they send it to me and I'm not clicking, let them not send it to me anymore. You don't have to worry about it.
On the platforms piece, Facebook versus Google versus, this was the other piece I was going to ask you, the whole like 2010, organic forums and like getting on forums and like, it's more of a tech thing probably than a marketing, but curious if you have sort of any insights on those various platforms and channels.
Forums I don't really use too much. I am a big fan if you're going to do anything organic. First of all, I'll say this. Organic is really tough to, I guess, run a business on, because it's not predictable. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not in control how many people search for that keyword or how many people go to that Medium article. But when you put in $1 on Facebook, it's very predictable what's going to come out the other end. So you're in control of your own business at this point. But that doesn't mean that you don't do it. Typically, the last year or two, what we've been focusing on is utilizing, I guess, platforms or spaces that have their own algorithms, which is to say, most of them, like say if we take medium.com or even YouTube, for example, or whatever it is, some of these, like if you're in the design space, Behance, I'm not sure, it's like an Adobe, maybe no one knows about that, but basically it's these platforms and these communities like YouTube and stuff that will, they have their own internal algorithms, which means if you give a super popular article on Medium, well, then it's going to bump to the top of the Medium news feed, and then naturally and organically, you're going to get more people seeing that article, which if you have a call to action at the end of the article that's click here to find out more and takes them to your webpage and your lead gen, well, then that's a really good idea. And what we've been doing that's worked really well is, I guess, we've been like manufacturing organic traffic by, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but if I have an email list and I want people to go to leads and I have a blog post about why they should, opt in, instead of sending them to my website first, we'll actually post that article to Medium so that anyone who's going to click on our email link to get to our blog post is now going to Medium, which is going to spark that algorithm, which will hopefully give us 1,000, 2,000 extra people organically getting to our lead generation. Does that make sense?
Kind of. You lost me. So you do the email list. So you do the Medium post, and you're just hoping organically 1,000 people kind of go to that post, or?
No, you're actually. So if you had to so the way, like say Google, for example, the way you get to the top of Google, one of the ways is you have a super popular, say, blog post, right? So intuitively, you would think that if you had an email list or a customer list of 10,000 people, you would send an email to say, hey, go check out our new blog post so that you start ranking in Google. What we've been doing is taking a little bit of a workaround and posting that same blog on Medium, say. Because when you send 1,000 people there, then medium.com is going to push your article to the top. And hopefully you'll get 4,000 extra people to your page because there's a little button at the bottom of the Medium article that says find out more, and then they get to your page. So it's a little bit of a workaround, but to me, that's the best way to use organic traffic, because when you're dealing with just keyword research or blog posts or backlinks, like it's tough. It's really tough. So these kind of platforms like YouTube, for example, if you can send a bunch of views to a YouTube video as soon as it's posted, the algorithm's going to shoot that through the roof. Then all of a sudden you now have a new, 7,000 people who viewed that video that weren't going to view it if you just sent them to your website. And as long as there's a call to action within the copy or the description somewhere to get those people to your website, well, now you're golden. And then coming back to the point, if we have our Google tags and our Facebook tags set up, our pixels on there, well, then those people are going to get retargeted because they're now warm traffic. So they're going back into that same funnel. They just got there a different way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're suggesting, rather than do it through your own website, get them to do it through these YouTube or through Medium. And then I guess that can kind of relate to partners as well, as like, so now people are incentivized. You're actually better off sharing a partner's resources that then, maybe there's a kickback to your site, but to have those backlinks, and that's cool. No
question. And that's a good point, because that's a lot of people forget about, affiliates or partners within your website, your business, because people are so focused on, they'll spend $50 or say $20 a sale, $20 on Facebook or Google to get one sale. But what you could probably incentivize someone who's a business partner and give them $20 for any referral they give you. It's the same thing. You're advertising through your partner. But people forget about that. That's the one we utilize all the time too. Like if we're selling, say for the course that on the quantum physics, well, yeah, you can do Facebook ads, but maybe there's someone in that industry that if it's $2,000 course or $1,500, if you give them $150 for every sale they send to you, they're going to push as much as they can to you. And then you kind of, because your website, has all this data on it, you're still getting the same data, and the automated system is still going to happen. They just started at a different point.
Nice. Love that. Yeah, I realize we're hitting one here. I got to run out. People can keep going. Obviously, if there's some more questions, we can do follow-up, Josh, too. Rach and I were kind of chatting offline there, but basically it might make sense to have you come in and do a workshop after this. And I think it's super relevant to what's going on right now. These past 3 months, everyone realizes how important this sort of stuff is. So there's really no excuse at this point for why folks shouldn't know this stuff. And I know we just touched the tip of the iceberg, but if we want to share an email, I guess, in the chat, and then also kind of chat about those next steps. But people are also free to keep going for the next little bit too, and we can kind of go from there.
For sure. Yeah, no, thanks. I hope I wasn't getting too much into the weeds, just sort of going down the rabbit hole and talking too much, but I can stay on for another 10 or 15 minutes. Anyone has any other questions? And yeah, for sure, I'll leave my email and my address, and we can chat about a workshop or whatever that looks like for sure. I'd love to.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think if we do move forward with a workshop, it might be nice to focus right in on the funnels and the sales and marketing funnels, just because I feel like that's a lot of what this conversation is like today. And I think it's a really interesting thing that we haven't touched on too much. So yeah, if anyone has any more questions around that, I would encourage you, rather than chatting about it now, to send it to me, and we can I'll chat with Josh and we'll work our workshop around that. Because yeah, definitely we want to get you guys out there again. But yeah, anything else you have for Josh, definitely chime in if you see a Pat. If you've got another few minutes for us there, Josh.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, Josh, I mentioned earlier the KBB course and its software. Its software actually hooks in with ClickFunnels. So they actually say use ClickFunnels which I've not used.
It's what we use mostly. There's a couple other ones like Lead Pages and Infusionsoft, but ClickFunnels is probably the most intuitive and user-friendly, so we use it mostly too.
Mm-hmm. And does it come with training on how to use it as well? Like, is there a bunch of info? Or?
There's tons, yeah. They actually, I haven't watched any of it, so I can't really comment on it, but they have this new, when you log into your dashboard, there's a new kind of section called Funnel Flicks, as in like Netflix, and it's like 50 hours of just different training videos and different things like that. So it is good. And then there's also like their help center is really great, whether it comes, you need to put in a piece of code for your Facebook pixel, like they have pretty good walkthroughs for it. Yeah. I haven't had anyone that I've kind of hooked onto it that has had any issues. It's pretty intuitive.
Yeah. I guess the advantage that you guys offer is that not only are you already experienced with it, so you save that 50 hours of learning and trial and error, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's the training and the learning, from what I could see, is mostly technical and not so much strategy, but there probably is some of that in there. I just haven't really looked into it too much, but yeah. I mean, and like I said, we just talked about the funnel on ClickFunnels is only one part of the equation.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's good. It's really good though. I recommend it. If you wanted, I could definitely meet up for coffee or on Zoom, and I could look at what you got going on so far. And I mean, the really cool thing about ClickFunnels is like I can build something, or if I already have something built that I think could work for you, I can just share it to you, and you just upload it to your account.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Josh, I'm going to have to.
Anything else? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say I have to jump off, but great chatting with you, and good to meet everybody. And Rachel, nice to see you and Pat again. So we'll stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming. I appreciate it.
All right.
Awesome.
Bye for now.
See
ya.
So I think on that note, we'll probably wrap things up if everyone wants to head out for now. But yeah, Josh, it'll be great to get you back in again. I'll be in touch with you this week. We can work out another session if you're interested. But yeah, thanks a lot for today. It was awesome.
No, thank you. And thanks for listening to me ramble, guys. I appreciate it.
No, it was awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for coming out, and we'll be in touch, Josh.
Okay, sounds good. Cheers. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers.